When you realize that you've been deceiving yourself about someone you've lived with for 3 decades, the entire world doesn't just stop. It shatters into 1,000 pieces and you're left standing in the wreckage, wondering how you didn't see it coming. My name is Oliver. I'm a veterinarian and I work at a clinic in downtown Long Beach, California. My son Ethan is 26 years old and lives in San Francisco with aspirations of becoming an engineer. My wife Valentine, a beautiful woman who was 53 at the time, owned and managed a small but incredibly popular cafe on Main Street. For 30 years I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I had a marriage, a family, a life built on the foundation of love and trust. I was so wrong. It started with something small, something I shouldn't have noticed but somehow did. March in California is beautiful. Everything is blooming, the weather is perfect, and the ocean breeze carries the scent of flowers and possibility. I was returning from the veterinary clinic around 5 in the evening. I'd had a long day, 3 surgeries, one particularly difficult case with a golden retriever who'd swallowed a piece of cloth, and a consultation with Roger, one of my senior colleagues, about a complicated arthritis case. My feet hurt, my back ached, and I was looking forward to nothing more than a quiet evening at home. I decided to organize some tools in the garage, something I'd been putting off for months. My wife had been on my case about the clutter, and I thought I'd finally make her happy by cleaning up the space. As I was searching for an old battery that Roger had given me, he'd recommended I use it for the backup power system in the garage, I noticed something odd. Behind my old workbench, wedged between some boxes and an old shelf, there was a small cardboard box. I recognized the packaging immediately. It was from that luxury brand, you know, the one. The kind of brand that Valentine sometimes talked about wanting but never indulged herself in. I'd never bought her anything from there. In fact, just last month, she'd mentioned a wallet from that brand that she'd seen online, and I'd filed it away in my mind as a potential gift for her birthday in September. But now here was a box in my garage, hidden from view, unmarked and anonymous. My hands started to shake. I didn't open it immediately. Not that evening. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe it was something Ethan had bought for someone, or maybe Valentine had purchased something for herself and hidden it, planning to return it. There were 100 reasonable explanations. But that night, lying in bed next to my wife, I couldn't sleep. She was watching one of her favorite TV shows, some romantic detective series that I couldn't stand, and she seemed perfectly content. She had her legs curled up, her honey tea steaming beside her on the nightstand, her fingers absently brushing through her hair as she watched. She looked like the woman I married. But I felt like a stranger in my own bedroom. The next morning, before work, I opened the box. Inside was a watch. Not just any watch, but an expensive one, the kind that costs more than my monthly car payment. It was beautiful, with a rose gold case and a leather strap. There was no receipt, no card, no explanation. Just a luxury timepiece hidden in my garage. I sat there for 20 minutes, the watch in my hands, trying to process what this could mean. The financial discovery came a week later, and it was far more unsettling than the watch. I decided to review our household finances, something I did every month but often delegated to Valentine. We'd been together so long that I trusted her completely with the details. She had her own account from the cafe which she managed independently, and we maintained a joint account for household expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, that sort of thing. But as I sat at my desk at the clinic during my lunch break, I noticed something peculiar. There were regular transfers from our joint account. Small amounts at first, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, but consistent. Every few weeks, money was leaving our account and going to another account that I didn't recognize. Over the course of 3 months, there had been nearly $30,000 transferred. My hands were actually trembling as I called Roy, my lawyer. We'd known each other since high school and he'd handled some paperwork for me over the years. I didn't tell him the real reason for my call. I simply asked if it was legal to investigate joint financial accounts without the knowledge of your spouse. It's your money, Roy said without hesitation. You have every right to know where it's going. Using the account information from the bank statements, I started to trace the transfers. It took me 3 days of careful research, but eventually, I discovered that the money was going to an account belonging to someone named Sebastian Mitchell. I knew that name. Sebastian was our neighbor. He lived in the house right next to ours, just about 100 meters away. He'd moved in approximately 5 years ago, and we'd exchanged the usual pleasantries that neighbors do. He was an architect, always traveling for work, and I'd barely thought about him since I'd introduced myself when he first arrived. But now, every time I thought about that name, my stomach churned with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It was worse than anger. It was violation. It was betrayal at the deepest level. I had no proof of anything concrete. I had suspicions, I had evidence of financial irregularities, but I didn't have the definitive proof that would confirm my worst fears. And I refused to confront Valentine without being absolutely certain. So I became an observer in my own life. When you're looking for signs of infidelity, you find them everywhere. Some are real and some are products of a paranoid imagination. I became obsessed with distinguishing between the two. When Valentine said she was staying late at the cafe to deal with inventory issues, I would subtly check her social media timestamps. When she came home with flushed cheeks and said she'd been rushed off her feet at work, I wondered if it was exertion or excitement. When she received a text message and quickly turned her phone away from me, I felt my chest tighten. When she showered and changed her clothes more frequently than usual, citing the heat of the kitchen at the cafe, I questioned whether that was really the reason. I became a detective in my own home, and I hated every moment of it. 2 weeks after discovering the box in the garage, I found something that made my blood run cold. Valentine had taken her car to work, and she'd left her purse on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I wasn't even consciously looking. But as I moved the purse to make room for the grocery bag I was carrying, something fell out. It was a piece of jewelry, a delicate bracelet in that same luxury brand. It was beautiful, elegant, the kind of piece that would complement Valentine's wrists perfectly. But there was an engraving on the inside. For V. From S. V for Valentine. S for Sebastian. That was the moment. Not the box, not the money, but that bracelet and that inscription. That was the moment my entire world collapsed. I sat down at the kitchen table, the bracelet still in my hand, and I cried. Not the angry tears of a wounded ego, but the desperate, hopeless tears of a man watching his entire life unravel. 30 years. 30 years of memories, of compromises, of building something I thought was real. And now it was all contaminated by this knowledge. I thought about Ethan. Did he know? Had he suspected something? I thought about my sister Cindy, who'd never really warmed to Valentine and had always said something seemed off about her. I thought about my patients at the clinic, the animals that depended on my professional expertise and my steady hands. How could I help anyone else when I couldn't even see what was happening in my own home? That evening I called Roy again. I need a consultation, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. I want to explore my options regarding a divorce. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Roy had known me for nearly 40 years. He knew that I wasn't the type to make rash decisions. Are you sure? He asked carefully. I'm sure. We met at his office the following day. I brought everything I'd found, the bank statements showing the regular transfers, photographs I'd taken of the watch and the bracelet, screenshots of Valentine's text messages that I'd managed to capture when she'd carelessly left her phone on the bathroom counter. I even had a printout of the recipient account information showing that the transfers were consistently going to Sebastian Mitchell's name. Roy reviewed everything methodically, making notes, his expression growing darker with each piece of evidence. Oliver, this is serious, he said finally. California is a community property state. In most divorces, assets are divided 50-50, regardless of the circumstances. But in your case there are clear financial irregularities. Your wife has been transferring significant sums to another individual without your explicit consent. That's financial misconduct. I don't want revenge over money, I told him. I meant it. I want the truth. I want everyone to know what she's done. That will come out in court, Roy assured me. The legal process will handle that. But understand, this will be painful and it will be public. I understand. Roy filed the divorce petition through the Superior Court of Los Angeles County. And here's what I made sure of. It wasn't private. Every detail was public record. The transfers, the financial misconduct, all of it. The court documents would be available for anyone to access. I could have chosen a quieter path, a more discreet dissolution. But I chose the truth. When Valentine received the legal papers, I was at the clinic. Roger, my colleague, noticed that I seemed distant that day. He asked if everything was okay, and I simply said I had personal matters to attend to. He didn't press. Valentine arrived home before me that evening. When I got home around 6 o'clock, I found her waiting for me in the living room. She was standing by the window, the legal papers in her trembling hands, her face a mixture of shock and fury. What did you do? She demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut. Oliver, what the hell did you do? I remained calm. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. I chose the truth. You don't understand. She was pacing now, her anger giving way to desperation. It wasn't what you think. It was, She stopped, sank onto the couch and began to cry. I love you, Oliver. I do. You have to believe me. I love you." "I know," I said, and I think I meant it. I believed that some part of Valentine loved me. But love wasn't enough anymore. Love built on lies isn't love, it's just habit dressed up in prettier clothes. "If you'd just let me explain." "No," I interrupted, not unkindly. "There's nothing to explain. The evidence is clear. The transfers, the gifts, the communications. It's all documented. The courts will see it. Everyone will see it." She looked at me then, and for just a moment, I saw something like understanding flash across her face. She finally comprehended that this wasn't something I could be talked out of or manipulated away from. This was the end. Ethan came down from San Francisco for the court proceedings. He was a good son, and he tried to be supportive of both of us, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Not at me specifically, but at the situation. At the realization that both of his parents were people capable of profound failure. His mother in her infidelity and me in my blindness. "Did you know?" he asked me the night before the hearing as we sat in my office at the clinic, long after the staff had left. "I suspected for a while before I knew for certain," I admitted. "A month, maybe less." "And you didn't confront her?" "I needed proof," I said. "I needed to be absolutely certain before I destroyed everything." "But you destroyed it anyway," Ethan said quietly. "Yes," I acknowledged. "But I did it with my eyes open, knowing exactly what I was doing and why. That's different from living a lie." Ethan didn't respond to that, but he stayed with me that night, sleeping in his old bedroom, and that meant something. The court hearing was everything I expected and nothing like what I expected at the same time. Valentine's attorney argued that the transfers were for business purposes, that they were investments in a development project that Sebastian was working on. It was a weak argument, and even her own lawyer didn't seem to believe it. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen every variation of human dishonesty that existed, listened to both sides, reviewed the documentation, and made her ruling. The divorce was granted. Per California law, the community property would be divided, but given the evidence of financial misconduct, I would retain control of the majority of my separate property, my investments, the savings I'd accumulated over decades, and a significant portion of the marital property. Valentine would receive the house, or more accurately, the equity in the house which she could buy out, along with spousal support based on her income from the cafe. It wasn't about ruining her financially. It was about fairness and truth. But here's the thing about truth in a small community, it travels fast. I mentioned the details of the case to Roy, and Roy mentioned them to his colleague Linda, who happened to be a friend of my sister Cindy. Cindy, who'd never approved of Valentine anyway, didn't keep it quiet. She told her husband, who told his co-workers, who mentioned it to their wives, who knew people who frequented Valentine's cafe. Within weeks, the story had spread through Long Beach like a virus. People started treating Valentine differently. Regular customers who'd been coming to the cafe for years suddenly stopped showing up. New customers who might have tried the place heard the rumors and went to other cafes instead. The atmosphere at the cafe changed from a gathering spot to a place of tension and gossip. And Sebastian? Once the truth was out, he disappeared from the picture almost immediately. I found out through Cindy, who'd heard it from Veronica, Valentine's oldest friend, that Sebastian had ended things with Valentine the moment the divorce proceedings became public. He didn't want to be associated with the scandal. He didn't want to be known as the man who destroyed someone's marriage. He simply vanished from Long Beach and took a job with an architecture firm in Los Angeles, far enough away that he wouldn't have to see Valentine or face any social consequences. Valentine was left alone. The aftermath of a divorce isn't just legal documents and financial settlements. It's the slow unraveling of a life. It's the realization that the person you thought you were partnered with for eternity isn't that person at all. It's the redistribution of shared memories into separate columns, mine and hers, and the ache of discovering that the same memory means entirely different things to each of you. Ethan struggled with it in his own way. He tried to maintain a relationship with his mother, but there was a fracture there now. He knew what she'd done, and knowing changed how he saw her. She would always be his mother, but she was no longer the idealized version of a mother that he'd carried in his mind. My sister Cindy was invaluable during this time. She came to visit often, brought meals, sat with me on the back patio while I stared out at the ocean in the distance, and didn't push me to feel any particular way about the situation. That kind of presence is a gift that people often underestimate. At the clinic, Roger was supportive but tactfully distant. He knew the basic facts. Divorce happens, infidelity happens, it's sad but it's life. He didn't pry into details, which I appreciated. About a year after the divorce was finalized, Roger introduced me to someone. Her name was Michelle, and she was an administrator at a local hospital. She was kind without being pitying, intelligent without being intimidating, and most importantly, she understood that I'd been hurt and that I needed time to rebuild trust. She didn't try to rush me into anything. We started slowly with coffee dates and walks along the beach. There was no urgency, no sense of fate or destiny. Just two people getting to know each other at a pace that felt safe. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming romance that I'd experienced with Valentine all those years ago. But maybe that was healthier. Maybe the kind of love that burns that brightly is the kind that burns out just as fast. What happened to Valentine in the years after the divorce was actually quite mundane, which in its way was far sadder than any dramatic downfall could have been. The cafe continued to decline. The scandal had done its damage, and her reputation in the community was irreparably tainted. People whispered about her, made assumptions, avoided her. After 2 years of struggling with declining profits and mounting debts, she made the decision to close the cafe. She'd built that business from nothing, poured her heart into it, created something that she was proud of. And she lost it. She moved into a small apartment across town, as far away from our neighborhood as she could get while staying in Long Beach. Veronica, her oldest friend, tried to maintain contact for a while, but eventually even that faded. It's hard to sustain a friendship with someone when you're constantly confronted with the reminder of their failure. Sebastian never contacted her after he left. He moved on to new projects, new people, new cities. From what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, and yes, there were a few, he got married to a woman he met at the architecture firm. I don't know if she knows about Valentine, about what happened in Long Beach. Probably not. That's in the past for him, just another chapter of his life that he'd rather not revisit. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. For me, the real consequence of all this wasn't financial or legal. It was the loss of a version of my life that I'd believed was real. Every memory I had of my marriage was now suspect. When I remembered our wedding day, I wondered if Valentine was thinking about someone else. When I thought about the birth of Ethan, I wondered if the joy on Valentine's face was genuine or an act. When I recalled quiet evenings at home, I felt the sting of knowing that while I was reading a book in the living room, she was texting another man. But I've also learned something important. You can't live in those memories. You can't let them poison your present. At some point, you have to accept what happened and move forward. You have to acknowledge the pain, process it, and then consciously choose not to let it define the rest of your life. I drive past the building where Valentine's Cafe used to be sometimes. It's been replaced by a different business now, a phone repair shop, I think. I feel nothing when I see it. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction that her life had gone downhill. Just a kind of neutral recognition that life moves on, and people make choices that ripple outward and affect everyone around them. The first year after the divorce was the hardest. There were nights when I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, my mind replaying conversations, analyzing moments, searching for signs I'd missed. My therapist, yes, I started seeing a therapist, something I should have done years earlier, told me this was normal. Your brain is trying to rewrite the narrative, she explained. It's looking for the moment where things changed, the exact second when your marriage became something it wasn't supposed to be. But that's not how relationships work. Betrayal isn't a single moment. It's a series of choices. That insight changed something for me. Instead of looking for one catastrophic moment, I started accepting that Valentine had made small choices, day after day, to deceive me. And I had made the choice to trust without verification. We were both human. We both failed in our own ways. Cindy insisted I join a support group for people dealing with infidelity in their relationships. I was resistant at first. I'm not the type to sit in a circle and share feelings with strangers. But after attending 4 meetings, I realized something valuable. Everyone there had a different story, but they all shared the same central experience: the shattering of assumed reality. A woman named Patricia had been married for 32 years when she discovered her husband's affair. Another man, David, had found out his wife had been with her boss for nearly a decade. We were all walking the same dark path, just starting at different points. What I've learned through all of this is that revenge, true revenge, isn't something dramatic or destructive. It's not about hurting the other person. Real revenge is living well after being wronged. It's building a good life, maintaining your integrity, and moving forward without bitterness consuming your soul. It's proving to yourself, if not to anyone else, that you were worth more than the betrayal. I have that now. Michelle brings a calmness to my life that I didn't know was missing. She knows about Valentine, about everything that happened, and she doesn't treat me like I'm damaged goods. She treats me like I'm a person who experienced something difficult and came through it. That distinction is more important than I can express. Ethan and I have found a new rhythm, a more honest way of relating to each other. He visits more often now and we actually talk, really talk, instead of just maintaining the surface-level pleasantries of a parent-adult-child relationship. Cindy and I are closer than ever. She's become my confidant in a way she never was before, perhaps because we both finally see each other as complex human beings rather than just family members fulfilling predetermined roles. My patients at the clinic trust me to care for their animals with the same integrity I try to bring to all aspects of my life. Roger stopped asking me about Valentine after the first few months. Instead, he invited me to join his group for occasional fishing trips, a quiet way of saying he was there for me without making a big show of it. That's the kind of friendship that matters, the kind that doesn't require grand gestures, just consistent presence. Valentine ended up alone, not because I orchestrated it, but because her choices led her there. Sebastian left because he wasn't willing to face the consequences of his actions. He took the easy route and disappeared, leaving Valentine to deal with the fallout alone. I sometimes wonder if he told the woman he married about what happened in Long Beach. I wonder if he feels any guilt, or if he simply compartmentalized the entire experience and moved on. I'll probably never know, and I've made peace with that. And I moved forward because I chose to face reality head-on, even though it was painful. I didn't hide from it. I didn't pretend it hadn't happened. I confronted it directly, legally, and publicly, knowing full well that this path would be harder than simply accepting the betrayal silently and trying to move past it. That's the real story here. Not the betrayal, though that certainly happened. Not the infidelity, though that was the catalyst. But the choice I made to value truth over comfort, to believe that an honest, painful reality is better than a comfortable lie. And the consequences that followed from that choice, for all of us. Those consequences weren't instantaneous. They unfolded over months and years, shaping who each of us became in the aftermath. 30 years of marriage ended, but the person I became after the end was someone I could respect. And in the end, that matters more than anything else. I look at myself in the mirror now and I see someone who made a difficult choice and stood by it, someone who valued integrity over convenience, someone who was willing to let his marriage fall apart rather than continue living in a carefully constructed lie. That's not revenge. That's redemption. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.